I looked at a video called Meet Your Meat, and I didn't know that was your video. I never knew what the process was from that animal to my plate. I said, I know exactly what I have to do. And at that moment, I changed everything, and I came back a year later, and he said, you got it.
This is what really killed Michael Clarke Duncan. No one suspected this health-obsessed vegetarian was actually being slowly poisoned by those closest to him.
They don't call me the top reality villain.
What started as a Hollywood love story secretly became the most calculated murder in entertainment history.
Duncan was 6'5" and weighed 300 pounds. He suffered a heart attack in July and he died yesterday in a Los Angeles hospital.
But to understand what really killed the Green Mile star, you first need to know the extraordinary transformation that made him a target. So let's get into it. Michael Clarke Duncan was the last person anyone expected to die from a heart attack. Standing 6 feet 5 inches and weighing over 300 pounds of solid muscle, he had transformed himself from a struggling actor sleeping on couches to Hollywood's most physically imposing gentle giant. But his commitment to health went far beyond his intimidating physique.
I looked at a video called Meet Your Meat, and I didn't know that was your video. I never knew what the process was from that animal to my plate. I never looked at it like that, and I'm an animal lover, and once I looked at it like that, I cleared out my refrigerator about $5,000 worth of meat.
Duncan had undergone a complete lifestyle transformation 3 years before his death. After becoming a vegetarian in 2009, he threw away $5,000 worth of premium Omaha steaks from his refrigerator. This wasn't a casual diet change. It was a complete philosophical shift. He studied nutrition, read books like Skinny, and educated himself about how meat processing affected both animals and human health. His exercise routine was legendary in Hollywood circles. While other actors hired personal trainers and attended exclusive gyms, Duncan created his own brutal workout regimen. He would take a 100-pound tractor-trailer tire onto his basketball court and attack it with a 12-pound sledgehammer. 50 strikes to the right, 50 to the left, 50 overhead. Then he'd lift the tire with one hand and sprint the length of the court. Duncan's transformation wasn't just physical. He had lost 90 pounds and maintained incredible flexibility, often demonstrating his ability to nearly do full splits despite his massive frame. His energy levels were through the roof, and he radiated the kind of vitality that comes from treating your body like a temple. The vegetarian lifestyle had given him what he called increased strength. He often spoke about how the most powerful animals in nature, elephants, gorillas, hippos, were herbivores. Duncan believed he was tapping into that primal plant-based power, and everyone around him could see the results. His daily routine included fresh fruit juices, vegetables, beans, and legumes. He calculated his protein intake meticulously, knowing that he only needed 12 to 14% protein per day, easily achieved without meat. Duncan had become a walking advertisement for plant-based living, inspiring others in Hollywood to reconsider their own dietary choices. Medical professionals who examined Duncan regularly were consistently impressed with his vitals. His blood pressure was stable, his cholesterol levels were excellent, and his cardiovascular fitness was remarkable for a man of his size. He worked with nutritionists and doctors who monitored his health closely, especially given his dramatic weight loss and lifestyle changes. This makes what happened on July 13, 2012, so shocking and suspicious to those who knew him best. Duncan wasn't just healthy, he was a health fanatic who had spent years optimizing every aspect of his physical well-being. The idea that such a man would suddenly suffer a massive heart attack seemed almost impossible to those closest to him. July 13, 2012, started like any other day for Michael Clarke Duncan. He was at home with his fiancée, Omarosa Factor, the reality TV star who had gained fame on The Apprentice. Their relationship had been highly publicized, with the couple appearing together at red carpet events and talking about their future marriage plans. But that morning, something went catastrophically wrong. Duncan suddenly collapsed, suffering what would later be classified as a massive heart attack. The official timeline states that Omarosa found him unconscious and immediately called 911. She would later claim in interviews that she performed CPR on him until paramedics arrived. The emergency response was swift. Duncan was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, one of the country's premier cardiac care facilities. The medical team worked frantically to stabilize him, but the damage was severe. Despite their best efforts, Duncan fell into a coma from which he would never fully recover. What happened next would fuel conspiracy theories for years to come. While Duncan fought for his life in the intensive care unit, those close to him began noticing strange circumstances surrounding the incident. Friends and family members who tried to visit were sometimes turned away or given conflicting information about his condition.
Just told me that they didn't think he would survive after the heart attack from 1 or 2 days, and he lived for 53 days. And I think that's a testament to his spirit.
Duncan's survival for 53 days after the initial heart attack was indeed remarkable. Medical experts noted that patients with such severe cardiac events typically don't survive more than a few days. His prolonged fight suggested that his baseline health was extraordinary, which only added to the mystery of why he had suffered the heart attack in the first place. During those 53 days, Duncan was in and out of consciousness. There were brief moments of hope when he seemed to be improving, followed by devastating setbacks. The medical bills were astronomical, and decisions about his care became increasingly complex as weeks turned into months. Throughout this period, Omarosa controlled access to Duncan. She made medical decisions on his behalf and determined who could visit him in the hospital. Some of Duncan's longtime friends, including those who had helped launch his acting career, found themselves excluded from his bedside. This created tension and suspicion among those who had known Duncan for decades. The entertainment industry watched nervously as one of their most beloved figures fought for his life. Tom Hanks, Bruce Willis, and other A-list stars who had worked with Duncan expressed their support publicly. But privately, many were asking the same question. How does a health-conscious vegetarian in peak physical condition suddenly suffer a heart attack? Duncan's vegetarian lifestyle and exercise routine had been well documented in interviews and public appearances. He had been featured in PETA campaigns and had spoken extensively about the health benefits of his plant-based diet. The contradiction between his healthy lifestyle and his sudden cardiac event was stark and troubling. As August turned into September, it became clear that Duncan's condition was not improving. The initial hope that he might recover began to fade as complications mounted. On September 3, 2012, Michael Clarke Duncan was pronounced dead at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. The relationship between Michael Clarke Duncan and Omarosa Manigault had always been complicated and highly scrutinized by the media. When they began dating, many questioned what the former apprentice contestant saw in the gentle giant actor. Their engagement had surprised Hollywood insiders who knew both personalities well. Omarosa had built her career on controversy and confrontation. Her aggressive behavior on reality television had made her a household name, but not necessarily for positive reasons. She was known for strategic manipulation and creating drama wherever she went.
They don't call me the top reality villain or nothing.
Duncan, by contrast, was universally beloved in Hollywood as a kind, generous soul who helped struggling actors and maintained lifelong friendships. The allegations that emerged after Duncan's death painted a disturbing picture of his final days. According to sources close to the situation, Omarosa had allegedly been selling Duncan's personal belongings while he was still alive and fighting for his life in the hospital. These weren't just random items. They were meaningful possessions that held sentimental value for Duncan and his family. Even more troubling were claims that Omarosa had manipulated Duncan into changing his will during his final weeks. Legal experts noted that such changes made during serious illness can be challenged in court, especially if there's evidence of undue influence or coercion. The timing of any will modifications would become crucial in determining their validity. Duncan's longtime friends began sharing their concerns about Omarosa's influence over him. Michael Jai White, who had helped launch Duncan's acting career, revealed that he had become increasingly worried about the changes he saw in his old friend. Duncan had begun distancing himself from the people who had supported him before fame, instead surrounding himself with new acquaintances who fed his ego.
Bruh, man, I'm telling you something, man. That ego shit, I've never seen anybody that gets caught up in their own ego be happy. At times I'd run into Mike and be like, oh, I keep it pushing. But he's like, man, he had a lot of things that he was upset about in life.
The transformation wasn't just social, it was financial. Duncan had always been generous with his money, helping struggling actors and supporting various charitable causes. But friends noticed that his spending patterns had changed dramatically after his relationship with Omarosa began. Large sums of money were being spent on luxury items and lifestyle upgrades that seemed out of character for the normally modest actor. During Duncan's hospitalization, Omarosa controlled all communication about his condition. She gave interviews to major media outlets, positioning herself as the grieving fiancé fighting for her man's life. But those who tried to visit Duncan in the hospital often found themselves blocked or given misleading information about visiting hours and his condition. The legal battle that erupted after Duncan's death revealed the extent of the financial irregularities. Family members who had expected to inherit portions of Duncan's estate found themselves cut out entirely. Properties, vehicles, and personal items that should have gone to blood relatives had instead been bequeathed to Omarosa. Bank records from Duncan's final months showed unusual activity. Large withdrawals and transfers had been made, often without clear explanations. Some of these transactions occurred while Duncan was already hospitalized and barely conscious, raising questions about who had authorized them and under what circumstances. The most damning allegations suggested that Omarosa had isolated Duncan from his support network systematically. Friends who had been part of his life for decades suddenly found themselves unable to reach him. Phone calls went unanswered, and attempts to visit were rebuffed. This isolation made it easier to influence Duncan's decision-making without outside interference or questioning. Medical staff at Cedars-Sinai later reported feeling uncomfortable with some of the dynamics they observed. While they couldn't comment publicly due to patient confidentiality laws, sources close to the situation suggested that there had been concerns about the decision-making process surrounding Duncan's care. Michael Clarke Duncan's death exposed the predatory nature of Hollywood's ecosystem, where vulnerable stars become targets for those seeking to exploit their fame and fortune. The entertainment industry has a long history of beloved figures dying under mysterious circumstances, often surrounded by people who seemed to benefit from their demise. Duncan's rise to fame had been remarkable, but also made him a target. After years of struggling, sleeping on friends' couches, and even living in a storage facility, his breakthrough role in The Green Mile had transformed his life overnight. Suddenly, he had money, fame, and access to a world that he had only dreamed about. But success in Hollywood comes with hidden dangers. Duncan found himself surrounded by people who saw him as an opportunity rather than a friend. His generous nature and desire to help others made him particularly vulnerable to manipulation. He began changing his personal history in interviews, distancing himself from the friends who had genuinely helped him during his struggling years. Michael Jai White's revelations about Duncan's transformation were particularly heartbreaking. The man who had literally forced Duncan to take his first headshots and given him his own resume watched as his friend began claiming relationships with A-list celebrities who barely knew him. Duncan started name-dropping Tom Hanks and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as close friends, even though these were primarily professional relationships.
I'm not trying to speak ill of the dead, but this is just what I'm saying. It's just about loving the people who got your back.
This transformation wasn't just about ego, it was about isolation. When someone begins rejecting their authentic relationships in favor of superficial Hollywood connections, they become increasingly vulnerable to exploitation. Duncan's old friends could see what was happening, but their attempts to reconnect were rebuffed. The financial aspect of Duncan's situation was equally troubling. Despite earning millions from his film career, he was not building the kind of long-term wealth that should have secured his future. Instead, money was flowing out as quickly as it came in, often to people and causes that didn't have his best interests at heart. Duncan's vegetarian lifestyle and health consciousness had made him wealthy targets for those who understood his psychology. He was someone who believed in transformation and improvement, making him susceptible to people who promised to enhance his life in various ways. This optimistic worldview, while admirable, also made him vulnerable to those with ulterior motives. The entertainment industry's complicity in these situations cannot be ignored. When celebrities begin showing signs of being manipulated or exploited, colleagues and industry insiders often choose to remain silent rather than intervene. The fear of being labeled as interfering or dramatic prevents many from speaking up when they see troubling patterns. Duncan's situation was made worse by the intersection of race and power in Hollywood. As a successful black actor, he faced unique pressures and challenges that made it difficult to navigate the industry's complexities. The people around him understood these vulnerabilities and exploited them systematically. The medical establishment also played a role in the tragedy. While doctors treated Duncan's physical symptoms, they failed to recognize or address the psychological and social factors that may have contributed to his condition. The stress of being isolated from genuine relationships and manipulated by those he trusted could have had serious health consequences. Hollywood's culture of enabling destructive behavior extends beyond substance to include financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. The industry's tendency to protect its image often comes at the expense of individual performers who find themselves trapped in toxic situations. Duncan's death should have been a wake-up call for the entertainment industry about the need to protect vulnerable stars. Instead, it became another cautionary tale that was quickly forgotten as the machine moved on to its next targets. The systemic issues that contributed to his demise remain largely unaddressed. The official cause of Michael Clarke Duncan's death was listed as complications from a heart attack, but this simple explanation fails to account for the numerous red flags and suspicious circumstances surrounding his final months. When you examine all the evidence together, a disturbing pattern emerges that suggests something far more sinister than a natural cardiac event. Consider the timeline. A health-conscious vegetarian who had transformed his lifestyle, lost 90 pounds, and maintained peak physical condition suddenly suffers a massive heart attack at age 54. This alone defies medical probability. Add the financial irregularities, the isolation from longtime friends, the alleged will changes, and the suspicious behavior of those who stood to benefit from his death. And you have a recipe for murder. The method would have been virtually undetectable. Certain substances can induce heart attacks in healthy individuals while leaving minimal forensic evidence. These compounds can be administered through food, drink, or even absorbed through the skin. For someone with Duncan's trusting nature and vegetarian diet, it would have been relatively simple to introduce such substances without his knowledge. Omarosa's behavior before, during, and after Duncan's death follows classic patterns associated with poisoning cases. The systematic isolation of the victim from their support network is a common tactic used to prevent intervention and maintain control. The immediate steps taken to secure financial assets and modify legal documents suggest premeditation rather than the actions of a grieving partner. The 53-day period between Duncan's heart attack and death provided ample opportunity for evidence destruction and narrative manipulation. During this time, Omarosa controlled all access to Duncan and all information about his condition. This level of control is unusual and suspicious, especially given the concerns expressed by his longtime friends and family members. Medical professionals who reviewed Duncan's case privately expressed surprise at the severity of his heart attack given his known health status. While heart disease can affect anyone, the sudden onset and massive nature of Duncan's cardiac event was inconsistent with his documented lifestyle and recent medical evaluations. Some suggested that toxicology testing should have been more comprehensive, but such tests are often limited in scope and timing. The legal battle over Duncan's estate revealed financial transactions that occurred while he was hospitalized and barely conscious. These transfers and changes suggest that someone with access to his accounts and legal documents was making decisions on his behalf. The timing of these actions raises serious questions about capacity and consent. Duncan's transformation in his final years, distancing himself from genuine friends, changing his personal narrative, and surrounding himself with opportunistic individuals, follows patterns seen in other cases where celebrities have been systematically exploited. This psychological manipulation often precedes financial and physical exploitation. The entertainment industry's silence about Duncan's death is telling. While colleagues publicly mourned his passing, few questioned the circumstances or demanded a thorough investigation. This collective amnesia suggests either willful ignorance or active complicity in covering up inconvenient truths. The broader pattern of suspicious celebrity deaths in Hollywood cannot be ignored. When stars become inconvenient, expensive, or difficult to control, they often meet untimely ends that are quickly explained away as accidents, overdoses, or natural causes. Duncan's death fits this pattern perfectly. A beloved figure eliminated when he became vulnerable to exploitation. What really killed Michael Clarke Duncan wasn't just a heart attack. It was a toxic combination of manipulation, greed, and a system that fails to protect its most vulnerable members. His death serves as a warning about the predators who lurk in Hollywood's shadows, waiting for opportunities to exploit those who have achieved success through talent and hard work. The truth about Duncan's death may never be fully revealed, but the evidence suggests that justice was never served. While his official cause of death remains complications from a heart attack, those who truly knew and loved him believe that Michael Clarke Duncan was murdered, and his killer walked away with his fortune while the world mourned the loss of a gentle giant. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.